You were told the world became safer, smarter, more connected. Maybe that is true, but somewhere along the way, something else disappeared, quietly, almost unnoticed. The kind of self-confidence that grows when no one tells you what to do. The certainty that you can figure things out because no one is coming to solve them for you. That is where the story of Generation X really begins. Not as nostalgia, but as a contradiction between freedom and uncertainty, between an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. You were trusted before you felt ready. That was simply normal. You walked home alone. You solved your own problems because waiting was not an option. Early on, you learned that the world does not adjust itself to your comfort. Today, people romanticize bikes, mixtapes, and Saturday morning cartoons. But those were only symbols. What mattered was the mindset behind them. No constant supervision. Learning through experience. You fell, adapted, and kept going. Younger people sometimes react as if these stories come from another era. You smile because they miss the point. It was not chaos. It was freedom mixed with responsibility. Independence was rarely comfortable. Often you felt only half prepared, but that discomfort made you adaptable. You improvised, observed, and learned to read rooms without digital signals. Silence was not a problem. It was your teacher. And this is where the difference begins. Generation X grew up in a world that was neither fully old nor completely new. You were not part of a stable structure. You were part of a transition. Technologies appeared suddenly, disappeared again, and were replaced just as quickly. Music moved from cassette tapes to compact discs. Communication shifted from letters to email. Entertainment evolved from fixed broadcast schedules to early digital experiments. You learned that change is not an exception. It is normal. That shaped your relationship with control. You do not expect everything to work perfectly. You expect things to break sometimes. Instead of immediate frustration, you start analyzing. Maybe that is why Generation X often appears quieter. Not indifferent, just trained to observe. Think about the neighborhood. It was not just scenery, it was your territory. You knew every shortcut, every fence, every invisible boundary. Friendships did not grow through profiles, but through shared paths. You did not find people through algorithms, you found them by chance. A pile of bikes on a lawn meant something was happening. That was enough. Today it sounds romantic. Back then, it was simply normal. No one explained how to organize life. You just did it. Not perfectly, but effectively. Social skills developed differently too. You could not edit conversations. You could not delete a message. You could not optimize a profile afterward. You were present in the moment, with all your awkwardness, sometimes uncomfortable. But from that discomfort came real social intuition. And then there was technology. Things were visible, screws, cables, sounds. When something broke, you tried to fix it. Not out of philosophy, but because replacement was expensive or unavailable. That practical thinking created quiet self-efficacy. You believed problems were solvable because you experienced it again and again. That does not mean everything was better. There was chaos, mistakes, uncertainty. But that mixture made you flexible. You were never fully secure, but never completely lost. Maybe that explains the humor of this generation. Dry, slightly ironic, a little detached. When you grow up improvising, you learn not to dramatize everything. A failed moment becomes a story, not a crisis. School felt different too. Information was not instantly available. If you wanted to know something, you searched for it. You walked through libraries, opened books, took notes. Knowledge had weight because it required effort. Mistakes could not simply be deleted. You erased them slowly, leaving marks behind. That taught patience. Patience led to focus. Without constant distraction, you could stay with one idea longer. That does not mean life was calmer, but thinking moved differently, deeper, maybe slower, but more durable. As teenagers, a new kind of freedom appeared. Many were latchkey kids. You came home, unlocked the door yourself, and suddenly the afternoon belonged to you. No strict schedule, no constant guidance. Sometimes it felt boring, and that boredom created opportunity. Creativity grew out of empty time. Self-reflection grew out of silence. Phone calls were small tests. You dialed a number without knowing who would answer. Maybe a parent, maybe someone else. You had to speak clearly, explain your purpose, and wait. These small challenges built social confidence without you even noticing. Then came work. First jobs felt raw and real. Paper routes, retail counters, responsibilities that mattered. Money had weight because you understood the effort behind it. It was not abstract. It was earned. Another difference becomes visible here. Many processes were slower and therefore more intentional. You had to wait, plan, prepare. Delays sometimes felt frustrating, but they built endurance. Now a pattern appears. Generation X did not just learn skills. It developed an attitude. Trust in your own problem-solving. Acceptance of uncertainty. The ability to move between worlds. Because you experienced both. A time without constant connection. And a time when connection became unavoidable. You know the difference between silence and overload. Between focus and distraction. Between privacy and performance. Maybe that is the real strength. You are neither fully analog nor fully digital. You are a translator between realities. That explains why the modern world can sometimes feel strange. Not wrong, just different in rhythm. Faster, louder, more permanent. While others try to keep up with speed alone, you remember that speed is not everything. Do you remember waiting for something real? A song on the radio? A television episode at a specific hour? A meeting with friends? Anticipation was part of the experience. Today, everything is instantly available, but sometimes less intense. Here lies the emotional core. Generation X did not just lose a certain kind of childhood. It gained perspective. The ability to observe change without being swallowed by it. Maybe that is why this generation often feels overlooked. It was neither loudly rebellious nor completely compliant. It moved quietly between extremes, steady rather than dramatic, and that quality becomes more valuable every year. In a world obsessed with attention, quiet competence stands out. In a culture built on instant reaction, patience becomes almost radical. In the end, the question is not whether the past was better. It was different. And that difference shaped you. You learned to navigate without constant instruction, to trust instincts when information was incomplete. Maybe that is the true definition of Generation X. Not a list of nostalgic memories, but an internal posture, adaptable, observant, skeptical, resilient. The world will continue changing. New technologies will appear. Old systems will disappear. But the feeling of navigating without a map remains. And perhaps that is the most important lesson. While others search for clear instructions, you already understand that the path often reveals itself only when you start walking.